Hey, welcome to this guided meditation. We'll be taking a closer look at the mind and observing some of the subtle phenomena as usual. And today's theme or focus is to notice how this reactivity to what we experience is what creates mental agitation rather than the things themselves. In other words, pulling towards or pushing away things that come into our mind is actually what causes all of our suffering. So if there's an itch on the leg, that itself is not a big deal. But as soon as we start thinking about how we need to scratch it if we're trying to sit still in the practice, then that is what creates the tension. And so we'll be noticing that more clearly and how we've been recognizing with the 4 R's when there's this tension in the mind, and then getting good at releasing that, not letting it have this grip over us, not letting it destabilize the mind. So please make yourself comfortable with an upright spine. If possible, just sitting comfortably, or I'll introduce the option to lie down as well if there's enough interest and energy in your practice. And you can begin by relaxing from the top of your head down to your toes. Releasing any tension, any areas where it feels like the body, the muscles, the fascia are holding a little bit. And then I'll invite you to just comfortably enjoy for a minute. You can turn up the corners of your lips into a small smile, which will help gladden the mind. And just sit there enjoying with no expectations. And now you might begin to kindle the positive feeling using a happy memory, an image of a cute animal or baby, or picturing a friend, whichever tool you've been using that works best. And start by sending this feeling to yourself, letting it pervade, suffuse, spread out all over your body. And fill up your entire field of awareness. And then once the feeling is going, it's like you've already started the car, put the key in the ignition, turned it, and the engine's running. Then you can just enjoy the ride. Can effortlessly observe the feeling and let it collect the mind on its own. Your only job is to use the 4 R's to steer back on the road if your mind wanders off to one distraction or another. And now I'll invite you to specifically take a little longer to recognize the tension when your mind gets pulled into a distraction, into a thought, or grabs onto some part of your experience, like maybe you get fixated on a feeling in your body or a sound. Take an extra couple of seconds and recognize that it's almost like the mind has clenched into a fist. And if you observe closely, there's almost always a physical tension that comes with it. Often people find this is in their head somewhere or somewhere else in their body. So just taking a moment longer with that recognized step before you release, and also taking a second longer with the release step. This is when you've opened that mental fist, and there's a subtle relief there. It's the relief of letting go of whatever your mind grabbed onto. Ah, and then you can relish the third R, relish the bliss of letting go. And the fourth R is to remain. Remain with that positive feeling, coming back to the positive feeling that you've already kindled. So, in this practice, we're just taking a little bit longer with the recognize and release steps to really recognize that it creates tension when the mind locks on to something. These distractions create tension. And to take a moment longer with the release and notice that letting go brings a subtle bliss with it. And in this way, we're training the mind. It's a kind of reward based learning where the mind learns that it's painful to grab onto things. And it learns that it's very rewarding to let them go, to let life flow, to let the mind flow. Attending carefully in this way to tension and relief. Either the mind is blissfully aware in a kind of open state of blissful awareness, or we use the four R's to recognize, release, relish, and remain. The release step, and this is tricky, There's a tendency when something grabs our mind away from the meditation to react on top of that with some negativity, like, "Oh, I can't believe the mind wandered again." But instead, we want to smile at the tension. We want to smile at the distraction because then we're no longer caught by it. And by pushing it away, we just add more tension to the mind. The solution is rather to welcome. And in that welcoming, there's a freedom of mind. So feel free to come out of your meditation now or keep sitting if you'd like. And if you're ending the formal session, you might just reflect back on what you learned about your mind. And then you can set the intention to use the 4 hours throughout your day and to keep meditating in this lifestyle where you're training your mind all day. And especially taking a little extra time with the recognize and release steps to really notice when the mind is caught in a tense state, when there's turmoil because it's holding on to something, lost in some worries, really taking itself seriously and noticing the tension that creates in the mind and body, and then release and okay, even just smiling at whatever I was getting all worried about. That release feels really good, and then we can relish and remain. Wonderful. I'll see you in the lesson.